Matthew 5:28. What the Messiah is talking about here is meant to be a greater explanation of what they already knew. In this whole chapter, he actually expounds upon the original writings to give more clarity and understanding for those who believe. But verse 28 specifically has been misunderstood for a long time, and has no doubt become a point of contention for many believers the world over. But let's take a look. Starting in verse 27. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not commit adultery. So mind you, the context is adultery. But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So it's definitely about adultery. And avoiding it, of course. To find the biblical definition of adultery, we need look no further than Leviticus 18. Moreover, you shall not lie carnally with your neighbor's wife to defile yourself with her. But I'm going to give you one more just to back it up. The man who commits adultery with another man's wife, he who commits adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. But going back to Matthew 5, we have a problem. Because here it just says woman in English. But in order for anything to be adultery, the woman has to be married. So can it just be any woman now that the Messiah is talking about? Let's break it down. So here is the translation for the word woman used here in Matthew. And as you can see, it can be either used for woman generically or wife specifically. And here are some verses that contain this word. You could see that Mary or Miriam is also part of the context here. And then a little further down in verse 31, we see he's talking about a divorce. So why would he use this word in divorce if it was a single woman? Because again, you can't commit adultery with a single woman or a woman who is not betrothed. So going back to Matthew 5, let's read it more like it should read. But I say to you that whoever looks at a wife to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. That makes a little more sense, but let's keep going. He couldn't possibly be talking about the wife of a man who is married to her. In other words, the husband of the wife would not be able to look at his wife with lust in his eyes without being an adulterer, if we were to take it as literally as it seems. But that's silly, because that would also mean that you couldn't have looked at your fiancée or lust after her before you marry her. Equally, you couldn't lust after her after you married her. Again, the context was adultery, and you cannot possibly adulterate with your own wife. To add to this, the word for lust is here, and it means to have a desire for or a longing for. But yes, it can mean covet, but it's not always a bad thing. For example, here in Luke 22:15, where the Messiah says he lusted to have a Passover before he suffered. So I hope this helps. Shalom.